just covered my first Vikings practice at the new big facility in Eagan, and Tim, I'm a little disappointed. It's not big enough.
You were hoping for a massage table out there for the reporters, right?
A massage table and maybe a landing strip and maybe a field of drones like fighting, wearing purple. I just don't think they did enough out here.
They actually will have drones out here for training camp.
I was joking.
I know you were joking,
oh my God.
But you take any of your ideas and publicize them, and I would bet that the Wilfs are willing to put the money into it if it's going to help them somehow.
It's immense. This place is huge. We were just standing out there watching practice, and 3 full-size practice fields? 4 full-size practice fields. I'm old. I can't see that far. Back to back to back to back. A scoreboard. Snipers on the roofs. I mean, they got everything out here.
Yeah, and what you don't see is also pretty impressive because I think some.
Oh, did I say roofs? I said roofs. Roofs.
Sound like a dog.
I know. I got to stop drinking right before I do the show.
Yeah. Well, no,
it's
better when you do.
After you. That's a good point. I'm sorry I interrupted you, calling myself an idiot.
Well, no. What you don't see also is that 2 of the 4 full-length practice fields have heating coils under them. Because what's been
trap doors.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
Catapults.
Yeah, if we disappear all of a sudden, come find us somewhere underneath a trap door.
Tim,
catapults.
If we disappear, nobody's going to come find us. Yeah. I just wanted to break that to you.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It is immense. And the interesting part to me is this facility, especially the grounds surrounding it, are nowhere close to done yet. They're still building the stadium that can hold, I think it's 6,500 fans, where there's going to be the Friday Night Lights type atmosphere for high school, smaller college games, the big events for training camp, their night scrimmages, their joint practices with Jacksonville this year will be held in there. That stadium's not done yet. The bleachers and seating for training camp is not out there yet. So there's still some parking areas that are going to need to be figured out. And that involves nothing to do with all the rest of the development on, I believe it's like a 200-acre facility where they're going to be residential. They had at one point talked about hotel. I don't know if they have that decided yet. So, yeah, it's a pretty impressive thing. I would be curious to put this up against, really like the Cowboys. They would be the only ones, and I have not been to their practice facility.
I have not either.
They're the only ones that I think could even come close to what the Vikings have produced here.
It's amazing. He's Tim Yoder, publisher of Viking Update. This is the Viking Update show on talknorth.com. That's your Minnesota Sports Podcast Network, Minnesota Sports and Business Podcast Network. Check out some of our new shows, including the Cheryl Reeve Show, which is fantastic. We'll be doing another live show with Cheryl at Freehouse, downtown Minneapolis in North Loop, June 11th, 6 p.m. Please stop by for giveaways and live questions. We had a great time last show. Check out all the shows. Check out all the shows, talknorth.com. And thank you to Twill in the Edina Galleria, twillmn.com for Barber shirts, which I wear, for Peter Millar shirts, which I wear, for Johnny O, which is kind of one of my new favorite brands. Love all their stuff there. Thanks to Scott Dayton for supporting the program. And also Tony Hoaglund, Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin. So what'd you see out there today?
A lot of bodies. I mean, we were blocked out from seeing some of it. To me, the biggest play of the day was Kirk Cousins hitting Stephon Diggs about 60 yards downfield, and Diggs making a great diving catch, and Cousins really putting it where the defensive back had no chance of getting to it. And then, John DeFilippo, the new offensive coordinator, talked about that's one of his emphasis. He wants to get it downfield, probably a little more than the Vikings have in the past.
Good, because I thought last year, as well as Keenum played, when you watched the games live from where we watched them in the press box, you did see open receivers downfield that he didn't see sometimes.
Yep, no doubt about it. I think Cousins may be a little more willing to take chances downfield. And in defense of Keenum, whether he has the arm or not to do that, I think he was in a tough situation last year to want to do that because you've got you're replacing the starter. You're not really embedded there. You've got a head coach that's all about defense and taking care of the ball, and so you don't want to take too many chances. The few that he took later in the season and into the playoffs were dumb chances. Mm-hmm. But I think if you can drive the ball down the field more, that's going to help out. And another thing that DiFilippo talked about that I found interesting was, he said he knew that Cousins had a good arm, but he was really impressed with his ability to kind of drive it on the outside routes. And those are so critical. When people talk about strong arms, I don't think there's a quarterback in this league that can't throw the ball 60 yards downfield. To me, the more important part of having a strong arm is the out routes and not allowing the cornerback time to undercut it and intercept it.
Yeah, you're right. The perception is that strong arm is all about how far you can throw it, but most long passes are more about touch and timing. And out routes, you really do. You got to throw it on a line because if you don't, it's a pick six.
Yep. And, there have been quarterbacks here in the past where like Christian Ponder, every time he threw an out, I thought, close to being intercepted.
Boy, you sounded like Leslie Frazier.
I know.
Christian, you got to be careful with that football.
I don't know if Leslie would have said that. It's a good pass. Way to go. There's nothing negative about Leslie Frazier.
That's a very good point. Who's not healthy? Do we have any injury updates?
Well, Dalvin Cook was doing individual drills. He's doing some route running. And when they get to team drills, he's limited to being an observer, takes off the brace and deals with it that way. Pat Elflein, not practicing at all yet, and I think that's probably going to be the case until they get to training camp. Nick Easton was practicing, so that's good news. Both of those guys broken ankles at different points in the season. And then Everson Griffin. Zimmer said that it was a tweak that isn't related to the plantar fasciitis that he dealt with last year, so we'll have to see about that. The big news really among those that weren't here or weren't practicing, Anthony Barr, not at the facility at all. And, clearly there's a little something going on there, him being in his fifth-year option. Not really, my guess is, hey, I don't want to screw things up long-term by injuring myself at a voluntary practice, but the real key will be, number one, can they get a long-term deal done with him before this happens? But when mandatory minicamp starts up June 12th, is he here or is he not? And if he's not, there could be some financial ramifications there.
That will be interesting to watch. Once again, I want to thank Twill in the Edina Galleria, Scott Dayton's shop. Very friendly place, very low-key. You walk in, there's usually a game on in the back. You take a left, you're over there with all the cool golf gear. Well, there's also cool golf shirts and shorts on the right side, too, where there's Johnny O, Peter Millar. Barber has these really nice shirts. I bought a Peter Millar, long-sleeve shirt, and it's got that kind of flex athletic material.
Oh, really?
I really like it. I wore it the other day, and I actually wore it at the Lynx game the other day, and it just really moves well. And, if you sweat a little bit like I do, it doesn't really, look like the way a dress shirt would look if you sweated in it. So it's just very wearable, very, very relaxed. Check out Scott's shop in the Edina Galleria, probably the easiest place to shop in the Twin Cities.
Hi, I'm Stacy Suhan. I love Twill, Scott Dayton's shop in the Edina Galleria. Twill takes the stress out of shopping by offering updated traditional fashion. I know that if Jim goes in there shopping alone, I will like what he buys, whether it's pajamas, flannel shirts, or suits. I plan to recommend Twill to my daughter when she has to buy wedding party gifts and attire. Twill in the Edina Galleria will bring your fashion game to a championship level.
All right, so we know that Anthony Barr wants a new deal. We also know that Brian Robinson made sure that a deal got done.
Yeah.
Not that the two are in the same situation. I'm not saying they're in parallel situations. Just
right.
But Brian wanted to play another year.
Yeah, and I was surprised how much he seems to have considered retirement, because football means an awful lot to Brian Robinson. You can tell. It's just in his blood. He loves it. His family is very involved with it as well. I know his dad is just a huge fan of his. And the fact that he was willing to take such a significant pay cut just shows you how much it means to him. And I think it also means a lot to him to play for one team, the team that drafted him, in 2007. I mean, think about that. 4th-round pick in the same year that they drafted Adrian Peterson in the first round. Same team the whole time. And, that just doesn't happen real often. And I think he's really growing to like Minnesota, what it has to offer. Does a bunch of charity work up here, has his own foundation with a fishing tournament in Wabasha. So, I almost feel a little bit bad for him that he had to take as deep of a cut as he did. I mean, he basically went from $3.5 million to just over $1 million to make it happen. But I think a lot of it has to do with his belief that the Vikings are super close to winning a Super Bowl, and he wants to return and get that ring because he's an ultra competitive guy.
Right. And I also think he's the kind of guy who probably hasn't squandered his money. He's probably put enough of it away. He's going to be okay. And if you're smart and you're that age and you know how all this works, put another $1 million in the bank or whatever it is after taxes, $700,000, whatever, $500,000. That's still a lot of money, even if it's not the going rate for a good NFL player.
Yeah. And, I think with his interests, he's got a young family that he'd like to, be able to spend some time with after his career is done. And I could see him getting out on the fishing circuit. Bass fishing is huge to him. He's always dealing with sponsors there and that sort of thing. So I think there's, career opportunities for him after football. But I think he wants to see this through to get to a Super Bowl with Minnesota.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's an important personality in that locker room. It's good for the team that he's back. What did you see out of quarterbacks today? Because I saw something that disturbed me.
Number one, Cousins going long stood out. But also, he seemed to really be aggressive trying to fit the ball in windows and intermediate routes and things like that. So, those were really the two things that stood out to me from what I could see. What disturbed you?
Well, I thought Cousins looked pretty good. As you said, I thought he did try to fit in some tight windows, which, at this time of the year, that's probably worth seeing. Can your receiver fight through? Can he make a play on this? It's probably a good thing to test out.
Yep.
And you're also testing a great defense. And listen, this might be completely unfair because you don't know what he was going against. You don't know what the situations were, whether the receivers are running the right routes, all those things. But I thought Trevor Siemian looked terrible today.
Yeah, I didn't watch him enough.
I did.
The few times I saw Kyle Sloter, he just looks like a prototypical quarterback. Now, he was a rookie last year. They got him late in the process. And so from what I'm told, he's still very raw, but they like kind of the physical traits that he has, big enough arm and all that. The couple throws I saw, one I threw, it was an easy out route to the flat. He threw behind him. So that wasn't real encouraging. So that, in my mind, sticks out as this is what they're talking about when they say he's raw yet. He's got some development to do. To me, you talk about testing things out. This really is a time of year to do it. I remember before Teddy Bridgewater got hurt, August 30th, 2016, that whole offseason, OTAs and mini camps, it was all about stretching the field, stretching the field, stretching the field. And you saw him constantly doing that, even if it wasn't always open, because they just want to get him used to that process. So I think there's a lot of that goes on at this time of year. I will never make sweeping judgments about anything at this point in the year. First of all, they're not in pads, so it's hard to judge anything that has to do with line play or running in the running game. What you can try to judge is the routes, the quickness, the accuracy of the passes, and all that.
Yeah, and arm strength. It's going to be a weird year. Well, I'll get to that thought because we're just sitting in the media room and something really struck me after I thanked Tony Hoaglund, Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin. Tony handles my insurance. He handles Michael Russo's insurance on the network. And one thing we've discovered lately is that the app that they provide makes life really easy. I'm not the most organized person, and you can just go to the app, print stuff out, check status. Tony was already he and his